She told everyone the camera was there for her grandchildren. In 6 years, it never once recorded them. Rachel Whitfield was 71 years old, widowed for the past 5 years, living alone in the same house where she had raised her son. Daniel visited her almost exactly twice a month for less than 20 minutes at a time, usually with his phone already in his hand before he even sat down. The camera sat on a bookshelf across from her armchair, angled toward the spot where she always sat. She told her neighbor it was there so she could send video clips to her daughter in Oregon, clips of the grandchildren playing on the floor during visits. The grandchildren had not actually visited in over a year. The camera kept recording anyway, every single time Daniel walked through the door. What it captured at first was almost nothing. Daniel checking his watch 4 minutes into a visit. Daniel asking for the 3rd time that year whether she had updated the will yet. Daniel sighing quietly when she repeated a story he had already heard twice that month. Rachel never mentioned the camera to him. She watched the footage back alone, late at night, long after he had gone home, telling herself she was only checking that the angle still caught the light correctly. For 5 years, the recordings showed nothing worse than a tired, distracted son who had stopped really seeing his mother. Rachel told herself that was simply who he had become, and she kept the camera running mostly out of habit by then, the way some people keep a porch light on long after anyone stops coming home late. Then, 8 months ago, everything about the visits changed. Daniel started arriving early. He brought groceries he had never bought before, asked about her blood pressure with a gentleness that had not been there in years, and stayed for an hour instead of 20 minutes. Her neighbor told her more than once how lucky she was to finally have her son back. Rachel smiled and agreed, and said nothing about the small cold feeling that had started sitting in her chest every time he hugged her goodbye. The camera saw something different than luck. It saw Daniel opening the drawer beneath her desk, where she kept her bank statements, photographing 3 pages with his phone while she napped in the next room. It saw him return 4 days later and do it again, this time with a folder under his arm that he had not brought into the house before. A week after that, it caught him on her laptop for nearly 20 minutes while she was in the shower. A real estate listing for a 1-bedroom apartment still open on the screen when she walked back into the room. It also caught a phone call he made from her kitchen, thinking she was upstairs. He told whoever was on the line that the house would be worth more once it was empty, and that his mother wouldn't need much convincing once the right paperwork was in front of her. On a Tuesday in March, the camera recorded him sliding that folder across the kitchen table, saying the word simpler twice, before Rachel had even found her reading glasses. She watched that particular clip 9 times. She almost told her daughter about it twice. Both times she picked up the phone, and both times she put it back down before it rang. She did not confront Daniel. She did not change the locks or call anyone in a panic. She made an appointment with her lawyer for the following Thursday and brought along a small flash drive she had been quietly filling for 6 years. Her lawyer played 4 minutes of footage and sat in silence for almost a full minute afterward. What he told her was that the documents in that folder were not about simplifying anything. They were power of attorney forms, the kind that would have given Daniel full control of her accounts within the year, the moment she signed them while she still legally could. Rachel told him she had almost signed similar paperwork twice already. She remembered both times clearly now. Being tired, being told it was easier this way, being told it was just a formality between a mother and her son. It was not disinterest the camera had recorded after all. It was something closer to theft, simply slower, dressed up convincingly as concern. Her lawyer asked her gently if she wanted to call the police. Rachel said no. She said Daniel had never once raised his voice to her, never once threatened her, and that whatever this was, she wanted it handled quietly, on paper, in a way that could not be argued with later. She did not tell Daniel anything had changed. She rewrote her will that same week and asked her lawyer to keep the flash drive sealed in his office until the day it was needed. 4 months later, Rachel passed away quietly in her sleep in the house Daniel had grown up in. The reading of the will took place on a Tuesday afternoon in a small office lit by too much fluorescent light. Daniel sat across the desk in a black suit he had bought for the funeral, already mentally rearranging furniture in a house he assumed would soon be his. Rachel's sister sat beside him, quiet, watching him check his phone twice before the lawyer had even opened the folder. The lawyer worked through the smaller bequests first. Her jewelry, to her sister, her car, to the neighbor who had driven her to appointments for the past 3 years without ever being asked twice. The neighbor cried quietly into a tissue. The house, along with the remainder of the estate, placed into a trust for the grandchildren to be released when they turned 25. Then he reached Daniel's name. To my son, Daniel, I leave $1 and the contents of the drive attached to this letter. Daniel laughed at first, certain it had to be some kind of clerical error or a joke his mother had planned to explain in person before she ran out of time. His sister did not laugh. The lawyer did not laugh either. He slid a small flash drive and a sealed letter across the desk, the same drive Rachel had handed him months earlier. The letter was short. It said that she had loved him through every visit and every excuse, and that she hoped he would understand someday that love and trust were never the same thing, and that for 6 years he had only ever asked her for one of them. Daniel did not open the drive in that office. He waited until he was alone in his car in the parking lot, plugged it into his laptop, and pressed play on the very first file. It was the clip from March, the folder. The word simpler said twice. His own voice, calm and patient, walking his exhausted mother through paperwork that would have quietly taken everything from her, one signature at a time. The next clip was the laptop, the real estate listing still open on the screen. The one after that was the drawer, his hand moving through pages that were never his to touch. There were 134 more clips after the first one. He sat in that parking lot for almost 2 hours before he could make himself turn the key, watching his own voice, over and over, sound more reasonable each time than it had any right to. By the time he finally drove home, the streetlights were already on, and he had not called anyone to tell them what he had seen. In 14 years, I have not heard a better description of how most of these stories actually end. Most people assume revenge has to be loud to count. It almost never is. Sometimes it is a camera nobody questioned, running quietly in the corner of a living room for 6 years, waiting patiently for the one person who finally needed to see what it had been, keeping the whole time. If any part of this file felt familiar, you are not the only one watching tonight. Subscribe for the next case, because next time, the evidence isn't sitting on a bookshelf at all, and the person who finds it isn't who you'd expect.